Welcome to the Abyssinian Syllabary, where we spell out Ethiopia in 33 characters. I'm Yves-Marie Stranger, your host and the compiler of these Abyssinian lives. Nota bene, while any resemblance to actual countries, past or present, and to historical figures is not purely coincidental, this is a work of fiction. For a primer on these Ethiopian characters, newcomers may start with the prologue by Manuel de Guèz. To order the book or a poster of the Abyssinian Syllabary, visit Ethiopia.com. That's UTHIOPIA.com.
How do we conduct our lives, master? Berde asked once more, for there was no question that the disciple found more burning than this one. You place one foot in front of the other, then you do it again, responded Zer Jacob. That's it? That's it, the master flatly confirmed as he plodded on. The Apocrypha of Zer Jacob. Se. Menfus Kiddus. Menfus Kiddus, the Holy Paraclete, later affectionately known as Abo, Father, by the farming inhabitants that cleave to the flanks of Mount Kaka, was born in the distant duchy of Anjou, in the land of the Franks. He was the seventh child of a family in which 5 offspring had died of the tertian agues, and as he was expected to shortly join his siblings in the heavens, he was hastily given the baptismal name Jean-Baptiste, for his parents found it an advantageous name to carry to an early grave. However, the paludal fevers found no grip on Jean-Baptiste, not for want of trying, and not even when at 6 years of age his father carried him off to the marshes, where the child tied the bulrushes his father cut down, and they were beset by clouds of mosquitoes. The mother and another infant, a girl christened Guillemette, loaded the reeds atop a tumbril they dragged through the morass to a hamlet where they bartered the reeds for monies. It is on the church square of this village, one May evening in which blew a gentle air that for once smelled of spring fragrances rather than of marsh gases, a good omen if there ever were one, that Jean-Baptiste caught wind for the first time of the children's crusade. These infants were setting forth to save the sinners of this world and pluck them from the spiritual mire in which they revelled. The preacher had pink cheeks and fiery eyes. He rhymed his sentences such as those of the village curate, yet said it better, and with much more conviction too. Huddled against the man's knee stood the guileless on the path to salvation. The preacher called them his holy saunterers, and as he did so they shed tears of exultation. And although they were dressed in rags, just as Jean-Baptiste, these children clasped their hands together with fervour, assembled as they were at the feet of this beguiling preacher. The latter had climbed atop a puncheon to cast his message of hope over the dirty square in which the hogs, the peasant folk, and their ill-nourished kiddywinks rooted side by side. The eyes of the little soldiers pressing around the barrel seemed to reflect the blue skies, and Jean-Baptiste felt the spirit rushing into him. That same night he absconded from the family cottage to save his soul. Jean-Baptiste became one of the fledglings pressed about the preacher's legs in scads of villages, towns and cities as they marched through the kingdom of France. They begged for their keep and ate, if not very well, not just watery porridge. They rambled down the highways and traipsed the country lanes, making their bed in straw barns where they amused one another with games of hide-and-seek and playing by turn at being a preacher. There were Benoit, Marie, Cyril, and Isabeau and Pernette, too, who was violated and suffocated one night, though the barn had been under lock and key from the inside, which troubled the flock. The preacher took stock of his troops' disquiet and announced that it was not always good to attempt an understanding of the actions of the Almighty. He averted his eyes as he spoke these words, and the children henceforth desisted from playing hide-and-seek, curling up together in a corner instead. When, shortly after this ill happenstance, the troop reached the Puy-en-Velay, they deserted their général in mass and flocked to a sermonizer who had regrouped around his person not dozens but hundreds of little boys and girls. This man of words not only had fiery eyes, but was given to shedding tears of rapture himself each time he painted pictures of the Holy Land in his harangues. He said he had a vision, and that they were to make for Sainte Marie de la Mer, from where they would set sail for Jerusalem, the city on the hill. This seemed good to the innocents, so they jettisoned their preacher after bashing in his head with a rock as he lay snoring in a haystack. The boat in Sainte Marie de la Mer was a white shell, as it traded in salt, and it seemed as if bejewelled on the blue sea. But the sparkling vessel began to take water on the very first day. The skipper enjoined the children to pray for their safe arrival, and when they saw the town of Tunis bobbing on the horizon, he called it a great miracle. And when the flesh merchants boarded the ship, this skipper told the children they were lucky to be alive. In Tunis, Jean-Baptiste was sold to a broker. This merchant sourced dates in the valley of the Nile from the Copts, bartering them for young boys. For the Christians there have monasteries that not only farm date palms, but also prune the slave boys. This is a practice that the Holy Koran frowns upon, even while Mohammedans have a great use of eunuchs, so that this means had been found. Jean-Baptiste was left to heal or die after the cull of his own fruit, according to the will of God. But as soon as his legs would hold him, Jean-Baptiste bolted into the desert. He had purloined from his cell a Bible in Arabic, and he now dressed in the robes of these Copts. At first, he used the book as a prop to preach on the river banks for the monkeys in the trees and the warthogs on the ground. But presently Jean-Baptiste found that he could read, so he began to instruct the peasant folk, and these people gave him something to eat. During the day he set one foot in front of the other, following the river Nile. Sometimes he walked alone, at other times he shadowed caravans who saw in him a holy fool, a talisman to ward off the desert footpads. After many months, Jean-Baptiste reached a plain encased by temperate mountains. It seemed to him that he had reached the edge of the world, so he proceeded to climb the tallest among these mountains. Here he found a cavity full of bats, and he began to talk to these, and even to the hyenas. And when the people of this country began to yield him small offerings, he preached to them too. And when they called him Menfus Kiddus, Jean-Baptiste remained quiet. That is how a boy from Anjou became an Orthodox saint.